Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, good morning, and thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. My name is Patty Urena, and I am the coordinator of education and outreach for Achieva Family Trust, and we're really excited for today's program on charting the life course. This is actually the first in our series of webinars that we will run between now and next April. So this is a really important topic, and we have five fantastic speakers with us today. I'm sorry, four fantastic speakers, three from the county, one from the state, and then someone from here from Achieva. And you can see their names up there. But before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. You will have the opportunity to ask questions in the question and answer screen. So please put any questions you have down there, and we will be monitoring that throughout the program, and there will be time probably between presentations or maybe at the end to take as many questions as we can. There is an opportunity to email us. If you're listening to this by phone by chance, just listening on the phone, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at futureplanning@achieva.info, and I can forward them to the presenters. I will be watching email. Closed captioning is available for this webinar. And lastly, this webinar will be recorded and put on our website probably by the end of the day today or first thing tomorrow morning. So if you miss some of it, you can go back out and watch it at your convenience. So again, thank you all for being here this morning. I'm excited to present our first speaker, Candy Walton, from the Office of Developmental Programs. And I'll let her tell you all a little bit about herself and what she's going to be discussing this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce today Pennsylvania's Community of Practice for Supporting Families and also charting the life course. So in the title of our presentation today, you heard charting the life course, but I'm also going to show you how it fits into supporting families. So I myself, Candy Walton, I work for the Office of Developmental Programs for the state of Pennsylvania, and my role is the Supporting Families Initiative Coordinator for the whole state. And it's interesting, you'll see that as we go through, we're part of a national community of practice for supporting families. And when I attend meetings from other states, a lot of people say they don't have a lot of time to devote to the initiative, or they talk about the challenges of time. And I think it says something for Pennsylvania that we have a specific job in the Office of Developmental Programs to coordinate the initiative for the state. And I didn't realize it until I was in this role. So I don't know if you realize it or not, but Pennsylvania is the fifth most populous state in the United States. So we've got a lot of people here in Pennsylvania to support. And so we'll get into that too. So today, these bullets pertain to my first part of the presentation today. We're going to learn about the National Community of Practice for Supporting Families throughout the lifespan. Hopefully, you will come away understanding the value of supporting families in order to achieve good outcomes in everyday lives. I hope that you will also have an understanding of what and where to find the basic Charting the Life Course principles, framework, and tools are. And at the end, just to foreshadow, at the end, we'll do a wrap up and I'll show you the tools. And depending on how much time we have together, how much time we have left at the end. I know we have 2 hours together, but at the end, once the presenting portion is done, you'll have the option throughout our time this morning to enter questions in the question and answer. So at the end, I'm going to show you some of the tools. I can show you how to use some of them. I have some examples of them, and I can take you to the website if we end up with time. So really, I'd like you to have a role in that as to what's of interest to you, what's important to you as we go through. So please use the question and answer if you want more information about something, or you want to see something or an example of something. And we'll use that time at the end to address what we have time for together. My last bullet on there is learning about how the Office of Developmental Programs, ODP, is working to support families and how we facilitate Pennsylvania's community of practice for supporting families throughout the lifespan. So that's my kind of first portion. And then I'll be turning it over to my colleagues from Allegheny County, and they're going to tell you some about how Allegheny County is working to support families and facilitating throughout the county. And then you'll get to hear from Jack about how Achieva is working on these things. And you'll see how Charting the Life course fits into all of this, hopefully, as we go. So the difficulty, I have a difficulty with the chat at the moment. So I'm going to open it up and just see. I have a question for Patty. If I ask the attendees to put something in the chat, are they able to do that?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I don't see why they couldn't put something in the chat. We can monitor the chat and the Q&A.
I know that's tough to do, so I'll ask participants, but thank you for the answer. I'll ask participants when it comes to things that you want more information about, just like I said, try to use please use the Q&A feature. But I'm going to ask a couple of questions just to get a feel.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Then we can, yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you. So my first question, now why I can't see that. I am not technologically awesome. I'm technologically okay. So I'm going to try to do a workaround here and find the chat. But I'm curious for participants, how do you identify your primary role as an attendee here today? I'm trying to find my chat box, as you can see. And, oh, there it is. So if you can put in we have a care provider here. We have myself, I would be here as a supporter. We have a parent and guardian of an adult, a direct support person, community outreach, community partner, parent, shelter, and school facilitator, and grant writer. Awesome. So you can see we have some diversity in attendees today. An administrator for the trust, policy and professional development trainer. And hopefully, as you go, you can find your niche in this, and you'll be able to see your role in a little bit of a different light, and maybe some of the possibilities for what you could do differently moving forward based on what you gained today. This is awesome. And it's great to see such a diverse group of people being able to be reached. So I have another question for you. And that is, I'm interested how many trainings you have attended or events of any kind, workshops by anyone of any kind about charting the life course. So just as best you can estimate. So if this is your first one, then just put 0. Five to 7. We've got some 0s and a 1. one Lifecourse training, but we've got person-centered therapy, whole college experience. And you'll see that when we talk about charting the Lifecourse, you'll see that it's a great method for applying person-centered planning and person-driven planning. 10 plus, awesome. So we've got a range, you can see just by all of this. Yeah, it didn't make sense 10 years ago. So hopefully it'll make some sense today. And it's interesting, and that's the reason I asked this question of you. Yeah, a lot of great experience. All right, I'm going to close my chat and go back to my PowerPoint. Current slide. So I asked you that because I wanted you to know, I wanted to tell you right away, wherever you sit, there's a role for you here. And it's funny, we had a couple of minutes as presenters before we hopped on, and we were talking about all people. And you'll see that one of the principles of charting the Lifecourse is all people. And as we go through and as we talk in these next couple of hours, you're going to hear lots of the principles of charting the Lifecourse because it's a way of thinking. And because it's a way of thinking, it takes time to really get it and to figure out what it means to you. And it also, it evolves just like person-centered planning. The more you talk about it, the different nuances you understand. And everybody understands it a little bit differently because we've all got our own perspectives. And so we have a community of practice. And what the community of practice is it's groups of people who come together on a particular topic that they know and care about, and to learn and grow on that topic together. And so for us, we have a community of practice for supporting families. And that's what we want to learn and grow together about. And someone said 10 years ago. And so you have a sense that this is something that is ongoing and evolving, and just like society is. So I'm kicking off with this slide, and I'll go back to it because it's new and evolving also in the last decade or so. Pennsylvania has been part of the National Community of Practice since 2016. And so Charting the Lifecourse started entering our conversation as a state and as a state office of developmental programs in 2015. I mean, we knew about it, and I'll talk about the history a little bit so that you just kind of see how things fit together, because how things evolved influence where we're at. And Nancy Thaler, who is huge policy influence in Pennsylvania, she was part of the origination of the National Community of Practice for Supporting Families. So it's not like, so the conversation was in Pennsylvania, it just started to be, how can we do this in 2015? And we joined in 2016. So I'm going to leave the map, but just you can see the different colors. We've got 21 states currently who are officially part of this National Community of Practice. And we get together to learn and grow together. So I'm going to go back through some history here. And this is how I work. I hope it's not boring to you. I like to know why. Like, why are we here? why, I thought we were talking about charting the life course. Why are we talking about supporting families? Sure, supporting families is important, but what do they have to do with each other? And why is it called that? And where did it come from? Who says so? And all of that. So I like to put all of those pieces together when I'm talking about this. So I'm going to go back even further. This slide has data from, I believe it's 2000. And so does the next slide. When you go back through the last 150 years in our country, for how did we support, how did we address the needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities? And then when the understanding of autism and diagnosing autism began and expanded and continues to expand, that became joined in with efforts for intellectual and developmental disabilities. How has that evolved in the last 150 years? Well, it's very, very different today. And even, the pandemic has changed a lot of social issues in the last couple of years. And so disability rights and an understanding of supports needed for people with disabilities is part of that narrative because it's part of our culture. So 100, 150 years ago, institutions were being built. I live here in Venango County in Pennsylvania, and I live here because I actually worked at Polk Center, which is one of the state centers. And I had never heard of state centers prior to that. I lived in Westmoreland County, and I didn't know about state centers. But I came here to work as a psychological services associate to help with mental health supports for people with intellectual disabilities who were living at the center. And so I learned about the history of state centers and that they exist. And currently, the move for deinstitutionalization continues. And so there used to be, and I'm going to fail this history lesson, but there were 8 to 10 state centers, I believe, across Pennsylvania 100 years ago. And now there are 4, and 2 of them are closing in the next year is the plan. And so Polk Center is one of those state centers as we continue to move from people living away from our communities, away from their families, and we continue the move for people to live with families or on their own and in their communities. So that move is not done and it's continuing. And that's part of a change that has been happening over these last 100+ years. So within the last 20 years, people were saying, we've got this system through our state developmental disabilities offices. We've got monies tied to waivers, but the ideas that we're using are tied to people living in institutions. And when we use ideas about people living in institutions in the community, it doesn't apply the same way because when we live in our communities, there's just, it's so much more vast. There's so many more possibilities than when we live someplace sequestered in an institution. And so people started to say, we need to talk about this and figure out what's the new direction, because that's where we were. But where are we heading and where are we now and how do we get there? So these next couple of slides have some just some facts that were part of the conversation that influenced the development of charting the life course and the national community of practice for supporting families. The question, it was looked at, who receives developmental and disabilities services as a nation? And at the time, there were using a prevalence rate and looking at the population of the United States, almost 5 million people with developmental disabilities when this conversation was coming about. And yet it was realized across all of the states that only about 25% of those people receive developmental and disabilities services through their state office. So 75% of people with developmental disabilities don't have any paid services. So when we talk about all people, what about that 75% then? It's not that they don't need supports, it's that they don't have services. They might want services. There might not be enough funding for their services. So does that mean that nothing is offered to them? So thinking about all people changed the conversation a little bit, because all people includes those 75% who don't have developmental disability services. And today the numbers are very similar. In Pennsylvania, the numbers are a little bit higher than 25% now, but it's still the vast majority of people with developmental disabilities and autism do not receive state-funded services. On this slide, it gives us even a little more information about all of those people. When we look at, so the question is, where do all people with intellectual and developmental disabilities live? We know that 75% aren't receiving paid services, but where is everybody living? And so we're looking at, okay, so that 75% isn't receiving services. Let's talk about this 25% that is. Where do they live? And it was determined, it was discovered that 14% of those people live at home. And living at home and receiving services at home means that they're living either independently with support, so in your own place, or you are living with family members. And we've come to define family. If you think about your own family and who you include in your family, family is something that is not necessarily your genetic makeup, and it's not necessarily your legal family. Family is who you identify or who identifies you as family. So living with the people who are your family. So what that means, 14%, what that means is that most people who receive paid services live with their family or independently. So most people are not getting services outside of the home or living outside of a family home. So that idea means that when we're thinking about policies, when we're thinking about procedures and methods, we have to think about those people as well. So the conversation, oh, and here's another thing. I am going to lose track of time, and I can't see my clock on here. So 10:22, I'm going to go back and go to my slideshow. So if I get to 20 minutes and I'm still not through this, because I can talk about this forever. I get so excited and I use all of these principles all the time. And I'm a talker. So if I get to be like quarter till, Can somebody give me a heads up, please? Verbally. Okay. I'm going to go back because thank you. It could be rain candy in a moment. So given all of that knowledge of where people live, who's receiving supports, and thinking about all people, thinking about moving from institutions to communities and family settings, people realized we need to have an understanding of what it means to support families and to support people in the context of their families and communities. And so in 2011, so that was 10 years ago, in 2011, groups of people from across the country came together for 3 days for intense discussion and in a conference to develop a national agenda for supporting families. And when you have the slides from this presentation, there are active links on these slides. So I'm just going to demonstrate. If you're interested in looking at the report, for the wing spread report, you can just click on the image and it takes you to, this is the website for the National Community of Practice for Supporting Families, the public website, and the wing spread report is right on here. And you can open it up. And this is where I could get carried away showing you all the resources. So I'm going to pause with that and go back to the slideshow though. So a report was generated from that conference, and we call it the wing spread report. And these are a couple of the quotes that I pulled out. Supporting families means that resources flow to those who need them the most, when they need them the most, with an array of desirable options for support. By supporting families, the goal is that the family and the member with intellectual developmental disabilities will have an increased quality of life, and the demand for long-term or crisis supports will lessen. So from this conversation, there was a national, like a bid put out. What organization out there is interested in coming up with supporting a national community of practice for supporting families, and gathering some states together and coming up with some more definitions about what it means to support families. And so this was like a starting place were these conversations with these family members, policymakers, and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who went to that conference. So that was the starting point. And then the National Community of Practice started with 6 states. And then it still continues today. And as I said, Pennsylvania joined in 2016. So some of the concepts, the ideas on this slide came out of that wing spread conference. But they also developed into the beginnings of charting the life course. And so some of the principles of charting the life course can be found directly in the wing spread report when you look at it. But it developed into a whole framework of ideas, principles, and tools that can help you try to achieve your goals for a quality, good life. So the next slides, and as you hear Allegheny County talk, as you hear Jack talk, some of the slides that I have icons from Charting the Life Course. Within the next 20 minutes, though, I will also go through the specific basic principles of Charting the Life Course. Okay, so that said, you know, hopefully at this point you can see how Charting the Life course came out of the community of practice for supporting families. But you'll also find that Charting the Life course principles and tools can be used by all people in any way. And so I use them all the time in my work life, and I also use them in my professional, personal life. So I have an example of how I use them in my personal life that if we have time at the end, I'm happy to share. So when you're talking about defining supports for families, you have the individual's goal. And when we were, as person-centered planning evolved, this fits right with it. So we want to support the individual to achieve self-determination, interdependence, productivity, integration, and inclusion in all facets of community life. So that's not new. It's where we have come to as a society, as what it means to support someone. What we've added through the community of practice for supporting family is that families need to be supported in ways that maximize their capacity, their strengths, their unique abilities to best nurture, love, and support the individual to achieve their goal. If people are living with their families, and if most people aren't receiving services, paid services, then it's the families who are supporting the person. And so then families need support in order to be able to do that. So what does that support look like? And three main categories, and in the Life Course framework, we call them buckets. There are three buckets of supports that we need, and they're right here. Discovery and navigation. People need information. They need knowledge and skills. So it's just a general category of information that people need. People need opportunities for connecting and networking. And that's for our mental health and our ability to be our best selves, is that we need to connect with other people who have similar life experiences as us so that we can learn and grow together. We need that support from one another. We need to hear other people's experiences so that we can learn from them. And we need goods and services. Some of those goods and services are paid, but some of them are available to everyone in the community. Some of them you have to qualify for. But regardless, we need goods and services to get through the day and to work towards our goals. Another piece that informs this conversation is what I was just leading to, that paid services are only a piece of the supports that we need. So this is like a flow chart. This is the past, where we were before and where we're moving towards is on the right. So we are saying the person exists in the context of their family and in the community. So true, that's great. So when it comes to those people who are receiving paid services, how do we approach that? And using the institutional model, we kind of encompass the person with services. In fact, in the institutional model, we did that so thoroughly that people moved out of the community, out of the family. And 150 years ago, children were put on trains and sent to places like Polk Center to live. And they were sent from across the state to live there. That's not the approach today. The approach today is what we want on the right. And we're always working to do better. On the right, you can see all these little stars, and they're colorful. And you'll see that those colors are representing integrating supports, that paid services is only a piece, and there are other resources we can draw from. So the idea on the right is we're not enveloping the person with services. We're giving the services and supports that are needed, where they're needed, when they're needed, to the people that need them. That's the ideal. If you tried to envelop me with services, I'd feel pretty crowded, and I'm a pretty independent person and would tell you to back off. But there are places where I need help. And so in those places where I need help, I'm open and accepting of that help. So if you give me that help when I need it, where I need it, and how I need it, then it's going to help me to achieve my goals. That's the idea. The core belief was defined through this process. And this is the core belief of charting the life course. All people and their families have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in their community. How am I on time? Jack, you seemed comfortable. What's my time check?
Yes, you have 6 minutes. Doing good.
Oh no. Okay, I can do this. So this is more about families, that it's not this. I'm having trouble switching to this slide. I got so excited and then I got worried about time. That there are reciprocal roles between all family members. And if you have studied person-centered principles, caring for and caring about, it comes from that mindset. Caring for is when somebody is taking care of another person. Maybe they're providing day-to-day care, providing financial information, doing something to physically care for someone, or to take someone somewhere. So there are all those actions that we do on behalf of another person. Caring about is different. And we've got an image of a heart there. It's you have affection and esteem for that person. You have knowledge about that person because you care about them so much that you know their favorite things. You know what they don't like. You know what they like. You know who's important to them. And you care about that person. And so you remember all of that. And you've got a commitment to them. It's usually lifetime. And so that's the difference between families and systems. When we work in a system, as a direct support provider, as a financial management, as a manager, as a trainer, whatever your role is, you probably care about the person. It's probably not a lifetime commitment, though. And your repository of knowledge, it grows the more you know someone, but it's not the same as a family member. Family members, especially the ones who, you have family members that you're close with, you have family members you're not, but we're going to talk about family members who we're close with. They care about. And so our services are not reaching all people. They probably never will because there isn't the money to reach all people nationally. There just isn't. And it's the service-based model isn't enough to fulfill someone's life, to have an everyday life. You need people who care about you and are in it your whole life. Services will come and go, and the providers will come and go, and the direct support providers will come and go. But your mom is your mom across your lifespan. And if you get some other moms along the way, as many of us do. They just get added in. And your siblings are your siblings, and they may grow or change, but they're there across the lifespan. Another factor is that there's been research done that shows that the power of parent expectations is huge when it comes to people achieving positive outcomes. So when parents have high expectations for what's going to happen for their children, they're more likely to reach them and more likely to achieve those outcomes. So what that means for us is that we need parents to have expectations of positive outcomes. We need families to form those expectations as early as possible, and we need them to change over time. So if my child is 25 and has a job, but it's not the job of her dreams, and we see that there's a different job, then the parent expectation that there's going to be more job activities, that's a high expectation. It's more likely for that to evolve over time and for the person to get there if the parent has those expectations. Our expectations shape experiences. Our experiences also shape our expectations, and they're influenced by what opportunities we have and what supports we have. So knowing that I only had 6 minutes, I am just going to flip through charting the life course principles, but you've got them and we're going to return to them at the end. So experiences, opportunities, and relationships all influence one another and help us move forward to a vision of a good life. This slide shows that a lot of times we say we don't know what to do, or we don't know where to go next. But life transitions, and thinking across the lifespan, we know that life transitions are going to happen just based on age. We know certain things are going to happen. And so when we think about what are those things that typically happen for the typical person as we age, then we can use that information to have expectations about what do we expect to happen at that point. So when we think about someone turning 18, leaving school at 18 or 21 or in that range, we know that's going to happen. So we have to plan for it because we know people are going to leave school and then enter adult life. So since we know that, what are some of the experiences and opportunities that could help to shape and influence that and get us toward our vision of an everyday life? The Charting the Life Course framework, I'm gonna move through it. You have all people. We've talked about that a lot, or I've talked about that a lot. All people, regardless of age, ability, or family role, are considered in the vision. They're also considered in the values that we have, the policies we make, and the practices we participate in. All families have choices and access to the supports they need. That's the goal. We think about the person in the context of the family. We've talked about that a lot. People exist and have reciprocal roles in a family system that's defined. It's person-centered. Everybody's family looks different. Roles adjust as the system changes and as people age. The whole family, individually and as a whole, needs support so that they can live their good life. This is that there's a trajectory of life experiences and it goes across the lifespan. That people and their families can focus on a specific life stage. They can be aware of how the past, the present, and future life stages affect and influence their direction. So the trajectory, we're talking about what direction are you going in, and it's pointed up because we want it to be up toward whatever our bright sunshine vision is, to have a quality life. This one is achieving life outcomes, and you've heard me talk about outcomes. Individuals and families plan for the present and future life outcomes that take into account all facets of life and have opportunities for experiences that build self-determination, social capital, economic sufficiency, and community inclusion. Quick example, my grandson is almost 3. He has some developmental delays, and he has been at home with his parents his whole life and his older siblings. In the fall, when he's 3, he becomes eligible for some funding to go to a preschool. And my son is afraid, which is understandable. My son said he's not going to know how to act with the other kids, and he's going to hit them. And so I don't really know what we're going to do. And I said, but he's never been around other kids his age. He's learned how to play with adults, and he's learned how to play with his older sisters, which means if you're a younger sibling, it means you have to grab stuff off of them. It means you have to steal food off of their plate sometimes. You got to do what you got to do. But he hasn't learned because he's never had the opportunity to be around other 3-year-olds. And so he needs those experiences so that he can have the outcomes that you're looking for, that he will have friends, that he will be able to do the things that other kids his age can do. So this is what we're talking about, that you need those opportunities so that you can fail and succeed, and it'll all shape toward an outcome that you and your family want. We look across all life domains. They're listed down here, and there's an icon to help us remember to think about it's not just about where we live. It's not just about where we work. It's about whole lives. It's not just about being safe or healthy. It's about all of it. You put all of those things together to have a good life. There's 3 buckets you've already been introduced to. And here's that colorful star. They're listed right here, what each color represents. The green is eligibility and paid supports. So we do have needs for some paid supports, but it's not all. We also need relationships. And some of our relationships can help meet our needs. We also have personal skills that we bring to the table and assets that we bring. And those can be powerful and can be the key to opening doors for us sometimes. We're learning more and more how technology plays a role in our lives, and that if we have the right technology to support some of our vision, then sometimes we don't need some of the paid services because the technology is able to do those things for us. We're able to accomplish things with the right technology. And then also our community supports. So our libraries, our public transportation, all of the things that our communities offer are also supports for us. And I believe this is the last principle, which is that transformational policy and systems change. And I know some of you said that you are in the business of making policies, that all of these ideas influence our policies and in really transformational ways. And so these last slides are about the Office of Developmental Programs. This is a link to our everyday lives, values, and action. Within there is a supporting families throughout the lifespan goal, that families need information, resources, and training, connections with other families and support services. Listening to people with disabilities and their families is key to providing supports that help them achieve in everyday life. So this is the work that I do in Pennsylvania. And I'm connected with Allegheny County. I'm connected with all of the counties, all of the Office of Developmental Disabilities regional offices, and all the way down to providers, to individuals and families. And our policies and systems at the Office of Developmental Programs are all influenced by the Lifecourse principles. These are active links for our team members. We have PA Family Network, Self Advocates United as one, and the Pennsylvania Developmental Disabilities Council. And our leadership team, we have a work plan, and this is a link if you want to see some of the specific things that we're working on. Supporting families at the local level means that we also, through the Office of Developmental Programs, needed a mechanism to not just be a state office, but how to reach people in their communities and in their families. And so we have these connections with the counties, knowing that people have services and supports, and we want them sprinkled throughout their life within the community and family. So within the last 5 years, Pennsylvania has regional collaboratives that come together to work on supporting local families by applying the principles of charting the life course. So to look for transformational ways to do that. They team up with other counties sometimes, or with stakeholders within their counties, with the idea that they'll be able to identify what people and families need to be supported, to implement and develop strategies to meet those needs through local collaboration and partnerships, and to participate in the conversation to improve systems. So the information comes back up to us at the Office of Developmental Programs, and we can take it to the national level too, so that it's a conversation where all people are included. Okay, I made it to that piece. So now I know I went over the time that I thought I would. Thanks for helping me, Jack, with my time checks. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Did I stop sharing my screen? I did. Okay. And so now I'd like to introduce you to my colleagues at Allegheny County, Anne Marie, Lynn, and Kathy. And they're going to share how this is influencing some of the work that they're doing in the county.
Good morning. I am Anne Marie Quealy, and I am the Planning Supervisor for Allegheny County Office of Developmental Supports. I'll let Lynn and Kathy also introduce themselves.
Hi, good morning. Lynn Pugliano, and I am the Eligibility Supervisor.
And I am Kathy Davis. I am the Promising Practice Team Supervisor. So can you tell me what you can see of what I'm sharing? Because I'm seeing two different screens on mine.
We got the PowerPoint. You have the PowerPoint up.
Okay, is it good? You can see it?
Yeah. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. Thank you, Kathy. So as Candy said, we are going to share with you today, what Allegheny County has been doing in regards to charting the life course framework and philosophies and tools by talking about our school pilot. So in 2020, 2021, go back up, Kathy.
Sorry, hold on one second.
Thank you.
There we go. Sorry about that.
So in 2020, 21, we were talking within the county internally about how could we do something. And my role in the county as a planning supervisor, graduates were on my mind. So we had thought that maybe if we had a grad pilot for 2021, we would focus on those individuals, those graduates that were going to graduate in 2021. And we wanted to look at individuals that were critical on the puns and that they were going to be upcoming graduates. So we started off with having 2 teams of 2 individuals from the county approaching the 9 participants' families and saying, would you be interested in doing this? Families said yes. We started having meetings with those families and introducing, the framework and tools with those families. Unfortunately, what happened is as we introduced the framework and tools, it got closer to graduation, and automatically frame of mind switches over to waiver services and how can we support, through waiver, how can we support them? So the focus kind of changed. So those individuals were more so geared towards how can we receive services. What we wanted to accomplish was what type of supports and services were out there for these individuals that were natural, that we didn't have to rely on waiver services only. But by the fact that we started kind of late in this pilot on the grads, that we didn't really get to know those individuals. So basically what we learned from the first year, that other students besides those 9s with our graduates were getting registered in April, May, and June of this year, with their graduation date being 2021. So those individuals that were getting registered later, we had no idea of who these people were. And we didn't give them due cause with, learning who they were. The other thought, and like I said, we didn't have enough time to get to know who these individuals were. So for this year, we decided to take a different approach. So we started talking with schools. In 2021, in 2020, 2021, schools weren't at the forefront of who was on this team. So we made it a special effort this year to invite schools. So we have 3 schools that we are working currently with. And we decided, like I said, to take a different approach. We decided to look at the kids that were in transition age, that once they turned 14, that's where schools, families, SCs, supports coordinators are starting to look at what is the good life for that individual. What are they going to want to accomplish when they turn 21? So we wanted to increase, like I said, that collaboration amongst, the schools, the SCs and the families and ourselves also. Our main focus was to basically change the narratives with the schools and the families and the kids themselves by saying, what do you think your good life is going to look like once you leave school? What are your goals? How can we help you achieve those goals? Now, remember, this is just starting. So these are the ideas that we have in our heads as we move forward, because we're just getting underway with this. We wanted to be able to provide the families, the schools, the individuals and the SEOs with alternative resources. What are other resources that Candy talked about? What are other resources are out there? We wanted to make sure that kids were getting registered at an earlier time in their lives to show families and schools that it would be a productive collaboration. This year, we have 15 participants, and I'm going to talk a little bit more of how we got those 15 participants involved, as opposed to how we did the 9 participants. So we felt that by changing the narrative, we would have more collaboration, increase our registration, and be able to focus in on what's a good life for the individual moving forward. So on the next slide, we talked about, early registration. That was another focus that we had because we were afraid that if we didn't have early enough registration, once again, we won't know who the individual is. We cannot support somebody that we don't know. And if we have more time with the individual, we'll be able to develop a nice service package for that individual, be able to give that family, the children, you know, even the school, other supports, natural community, waiver supports, whatever is needed to have a good adult life for that child, that student moving forward. On the next slide, we have, wait a minute. Oh, the register. I'm sorry. But I also wanted to say with the registration that we had, our data showed that typically when we look at kids in school, if we have out of the population of the school kids that are registered, only typically 1/3 of kids are registered. As Candy was showing in her slides before, you know, out of 100% of individuals with ID and autism, only 25%, you know, are registered. And then we're seeing the same thing with the kids, that only like 1/3 of those kids are registered with the county. So we wanted to change that number. So here is a trajectory that we had shared with the schools. And initially we developed this trajectory and shared it with the schools. And we were like, you know, here's a trajectory that we developed, schools, what do you think? And the schools, okay, that's good. But what we didn't realize was, in order for this to work, the schools needed to also have a voice. So we went back and said, you know, we developed this, schools, what do you think? And the schools started putting more things into this trajectory. Initially, like I said, what we wanted to do, my idea actually, was we wanted to look at 14-year-olds, and we wanted to, you know, look at those 14 years old. Are they registered? Are they not registered? And as we did this trajectory with the schools, they said, why are you so hot on looking at 14-year-olds? And I said, because those kids aren't registered and we want to increase our registration. And the school says, well, we could send out flyers, we could send out information to those families of those 14-year-olds, but don't you think it would be a better turnout of individuals if we did it with students and families that knew us and we knew them? Because if you just focus on 14-year-olds, we can send out 10 flyers to those 14-year-olds families, and maybe you'll get 1 or 2 individuals that would be interested. If we were able to go to the families and talk to the families that we knew, and we would expand our age limit to maybe 16, we would have better success. And as you saw from last year, we only had 9 participants. We started out with like 30 individuals, and we got 9 out of that group that we did last year. This year, like I said, with the school's aha moment as to saying, we can do this with families that we know and we'll have a better success rate, let us do it that way. We have now 15 participants. And we're, like I said, we are working and collaborating with 3 schools with doing this project. And the schools are very much in love with what we're doing. They are, you know, very much dedicated to what we're doing. They're giving a lot of us good ideas as to how to move forward. And as you can see with this trajectory that we went over with them, you know, what was your past life experience? What has been going on that you don't want to see happen anymore? How can we encourage families and students and SCs to everybody to collaborate? Because if everybody's working together, it makes a better life for the individual. And that's what our goal is. So at this point in time, we have just started going to IEPs for the children that are involved in this initiative pilot. And then we also learned that not all IEPs are happening now. Some schools have IEPs in the springtime. So we had to take another step back and say, okay, let's just meet with families and let's develop, get to know who these people are. We were thinking that would go to the IEPs and be able to gather up some information to get to know who people are. But that's not going to happen. Some are started, like I said, but we're looking now at, like, let's just have family meetings. Let's meet with these individuals and families and teams on a monthly basis, just to get to know who these people are, especially for us to get to know them and them to get to know us, because some families are like, well, we don't need any services now. Well, maybe you don't need any services now, but if we get involved now, we'll have a better understanding of who the student is and be able to provide some natural resources along the way. Because any document that we do, Candy was showing the STAR, the trajectory, they are all fluid documents. So they would always change. If something changed in an individual's life, then the document would change. This is never set in stone. Milestones occur, things happen, and things will change. A child might say, oh, I want to be a pilot. What does that mean to a child that they want to be a pilot? That they want to go to the airport and watch the planes take off? Would they want a job at the airport? Different things like that. So that's what we're trying to accomplish this year with our collaboration between the schools and the SCs. So the next page will show what the benefits are with our collaboration. I keep talking about team collaboration. I think the fact about the schools being in partnership with us, about being able to, give their voice, being able to know who they need to contact, especially with supports coordination units. Who are the other people involved in that individual's life? Us going to the school-based meetings, going to the IEPs, helping problem solve, resource sharing. That's one of the big things that at the county that we have, that we learning every day, different resources that we can share with families and students and SEOs, that we're always giving out information, better understanding for the families and the school as to how the adult system works. Entitlements versus voluntary. When schools, they're entitled to go to schools. When it hits the adult world, it's all voluntary. It depends on the individual as to do they want to receive services from the county. And we want to be able to provide accurate information regarding system change, because with community of practice and the Lifecourse framework, things are changing all the time. So I just want to put that out there. The next page talks about the roles of our staff. As like I said before, we want to get kids registered early, introduce the framework and tools to everyone. Mentor school staff. Like I said, the school staff that we have on board is very open and willing and wanting to learn about the Lifecourse framework and the tools and the trainings, and just the whole philosophy of this is, it's a wonderful idea for the schools to be that encouraged to want to be able to do this. And like I said before, changing that narrative, there are things out there. We always don't have to rely on waiver. There are other actions that can happen. And like I said, natural resources, community resources. And we want to be there to be able to help individuals and families to, navigate the system and navigate that, there's other things besides waiver that we can help you with. And I think that's it for me.
Good morning,
So
everyone. Whoop, go ahead.
Heather's going to help us with that.
So good morning, everyone. One of the things I want to touch on is one of the tools that we use that is part of the Lifecourse framework, the one-page profile. So one of the other ways that we have incorporated the tools from the Lifecourse framework into our current processes is just taking a step back and trying to look at that process through the lens of the Lifecourse framework. The one-page profile tool is one of the tools that we learned about through the course of our education around the Lifecourse framework that offers an opportunity to look at the needs of an individual and what they want for their life a little bit differently than some of the other traditional processes that we have. The tool itself covers 5 different areas: what people like and admire about me, what's important to me, how to best support me, what is my vision for a good life, and also what I don't want. The tool is a great opportunity to involve the person themselves in the conversation about what they're looking for as they transition through different life stages. If they're looking at transitioning from one residence or living setting to another. One of the reasons that we like this tool is because it offers a holistic, person-centered, and strength-based opportunity to present what an individual wants for their life. So it frames it from connections, supports, and services that will help that person to achieve their vision of a good life. Working through the tool with an individual allows us to get a picture of what they want for their life, and just as importantly, what they don't want for their life. And when we're developing this tool, we're not concerned about how realistic that vision is for the person. It's more important about where do they see themselves going and how do we help them on their journey. So as we were looking at processes to change, one of the things that we looked at was our statewide distribution process. That is a process that we have internally at the county office to seek outside paid resources, where we share information with our providers. So this was a tool that, and I'll talk about it in a couple of slides, about how we can kind of turn that process on its head from what we had been doing. So before I talk about the process a little bit more, though, I want to jump to an example that we have. This is Jacob's one-page profile that was completed by him and his family. They contributed a great deal to the conversation as we were developing the tool. For those of you who are already in the system and are familiar with the individual support plan or the ISP, you can see that this tool will reflect a lot of the information that's in an ISP, but it's bringing forward into or highlighting the information that's important to Jacob and his family. It starts out sharing those positive qualities that the people who are around Jacob know and love about him. What's important to Jacob, his family and his dog. It brings those things out to the forefront so that as the paid supports are looking for options that they may have to provide a support to Jacob, they can look at how the qualities that they have or the characteristics of their agency might be able to fit nicely with what Jacob wants for his life and what's important to him. Those aspects of the tool that might touch on some of those paid services in that how to best support me can bring out some of those natural supports that are available in the community or that are available through the connections that Jacob has. But it can also touch on those paid services that will be helpful for him to achieve his vision of his life. In his vision of a good life, he and his family work to spell out those things that are important to him and where he would like to go. As he's transitioning to adulthood, what meaningful day activities might he want to participate in, the things that he wants to have in his life that make him feel good and loved and healthy. Some of the things that Jacob doesn't want in his life are really important for teams to note, so that as they're working with him to build a support plan, we're really taking those things into account that reflect the things that are troublesome to him or might be triggering for him. It really just helps us to be informed about how to build that best life for him. So I touched on earlier that we have adopted the one-page profile as part of our statewide distribution process. Prior to our using this tool, our process included just sending a redacted ISP. So we would take the ISP, pull out as much of the identifying information as we could about that individual, but still was able to share information with our provider system about what that person might need. So the ISP has a lot of information in it. It can be challenging for a provider to be able to pull out those pieces of information that that they need to be able to identify if they're a good fit for that individual. Some of the ISPs, just by the inherent nature of being thorough and providing information, it's not uncommon for them to have some negative information in them. And that's not how we want to introduce an individual to the provider system. There's a lot of details that are not needed, at least at that initial outset, for a provider to make that determination. So we try to minimize how much information is put out to the general provider system until we have interest, and then we can take those next steps to share the more detailed information. And the ISPs can be based on justifying a service, and rather than based on that vision that the person has for their life. So by using the one-page profile as a way to introduce the person, we know we are using language and a tool that is holistic and strength-based, focused on that person as they see themselves. It's easy because it's only one page to be able to get a quick view of what the person's needs are and how that can support them in their journey. Of course, it reflects their vision for their life, which is extremely important. And then, as I touched on earlier, it minimizes the information that's distributed far and wide, so that once we receive provider interest, we can work to share those additional details. And I want to be clear, we do still share the ISP information because it has a lot of information in there that a provider needs. But again, we're trying to minimize how much of a person's life is put out just to the whole world. So one of the things that we have noticed as an outcome from changing our process is that we are getting a better provider response. It's been a good tool that is easy for the providers to get that quick look, and they are reaching out more often than when we had used our previous process. So I think in all ways, it's been a positive experience for our office. So, and that is all I had today. So I think we're going to turn it over to, if I can stop sharing, over to Jack.
Sounds good, Kathy. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you turning it over to me, and I'm kind of the caboose today, so I appreciate all the speakers. Definitely learned a lot from your presentations, and I don't use PowerPoint, and I just really want to talk to you. Talk a little bit about the impact of, and you'll see these letters before charting the life course, UMKC. Charting the life course came out of a college in Kansas City, and my first exposure to it was about 5 years ago. I embraced charting the life course as a framework. Early on, I was always looking for tools, and I was really sold on, Lifecourse because it was visual and it was more of a framework. And, being a person that's non-linear, I don't go step by step. At times, people will describe me as, very passionate when I speak, but, I can be all over the place. So I did take some notes, just to stay on track. And I know I only have a little bit of time with you. So I want to make the most of that time. And, tell you that, the life domains and the tools, touched me because they were so customizable. You could use them, through, a web-based platform like, we're doing today. And you could, customize the fields in the STAR to not only include strengths, but also what, are some of the unmet needs as well. So later on in my exposure and then engagement in Lifecourse, I came across an experience, through our community of practice with Duquesne University, where an OT student developed a tactile STAR for a person who's visually impaired, and it could also be used for people, with autism. So, these tools, are, also available to anybody who just signs on to the Lifecourse tools.com website, or type in Lifecourse Nexus, and you're going to find a lot of what we've used, what we've even created at Achieva, as well as, what other organizations have created right on that website. So to me, that's a really cool thing. But at the time, 5 years ago, what was most important is that it influenced me. At the time, I was doing a lot of training. I was working in HR, and I was looking at being part of our transformation as an organization. So I used the tools, for myself, and they really helped me organize my ideas. Having ADHD, that's really important for me, not just to me. It's important for me, to have a clear vision in mind, my goals, organized, and to have methods or strategies to problem solve and navigate, and then obviously, advocating for supports, not just for myself, but, for all people, was part of, what I learned early on. So, it was amazing to me that the state of the art framework, was real young, and I'm not great at history. Candy did a wonderful job of that, but I will say it's only been around for 6 or 7 years. It was built from the learning community, person-centered thinking. Some of you know Jack Pierpont, Beth Mounts, as well as Michael Small, and they consulted together to create, the STAR and some of the other, resources that you will find in that framework. So to me, that was great that we weren't taking away from anything that was done when deinstitutionalization occurred, and people were transitioning into the community using that person-centered thinking process, essential lifestyle plans, what the non-negotiables and the negotiables, were all part of those plans. And, building off of that, we now have this partner, that is not only influencing us as a region, Allegheny County. I work out of Westmoreland County as well as Washington County, but is also impacting our state. So, that's quite, a community of practice now, including Achieva. I was, again, just taken back that a lot of these stories of success were, on the Nexus, and you could, listen to them or watch them through YouTube videos. So to me, that was something not as much as inspirational, but, could give you a real good visual on how to use these tools. Today is more of an introduction and how we're all using them in our area of concentration. a couple years later, I went on to go through an ambassador training. So I think, you know, we're coming up on 2 years since Anne-Marie and Lynn and I participated in the ambassador training, and you know, that had a great, you know, impact, you know, on, you know, the way that I use the tools as well. Even recently engaging with some of the Lifecourse mentors, we've discussed, you know, areas of concern. You know, many of you, you know, and I see a lot of familiar names, you know, in the participant list here, are familiar with the CPS final rule. And, you know, as deadlines approach, and you know, we have efforts, you know, being made statewide to be compliant, Lifecourse, you know, is a framework that can help us develop strategies to achieve that goal. Now, Achieva, you know, for me, you know, being involved in transformation, not being involved in a lot of the other provider organizations in the counties, I feel that, you know, we're a step ahead in that, you know, we recognize that sub-minimum rates were not serving the people that we were providing support to at the time. It wasn't in line with our core values. We made a decision to not focus on facility-based supports and used person-centered planning to help people develop opportunities in the community. So that was a big step when it came to transitioning into typical environments and helping people live their lives of personal significance. The Lifecourse tool was really part of the engine, you know, that helped drive people, you know, into their communities. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud, you know, to be a part of that. And I'm proud to, you know, continue to challenge where people are at, you know, with these high expectations. You keep hearing all the leaders today, other mentors today talk about high expectations, and that's not just for the people that we support. You know, that's obviously, you know, a trait that we need as parents or community members, employees, as leaders, as provider organizations as well. So, you know, when we started using, you know, Lifecourse and person-centered planning, we also needed to take action, because without the action, it's just expensive paper. You know, we got everybody together, we all sat around the table, and again, you know, nothing happened. And it's tough for me to have read plans, you know, from 2002 that were really neat person-centered plans that were developed and were thoughtful. But, you know, at the time when I read them in 2018, nothing had occurred for the person. They wanted a job in the community, and 16 years later, they were still, you know, in a facility-based support, getting paid pennies on the dollar. So, you know, when we started, you know, this initiative, we really took the action piece seriously. In the room today, there is a colleague of mine, his name's Greg, and some of these stories that I'm going to share, he was involved in, you know, helping as a team member, as a person that was chosen by the person to be at that table, not as a person that was just prescribed to be there. It was the person invited him to the table, invited me to the table. That was a whole like flip for us in our organization, because people were just so used to, you know, being part of that team, and anytime there was a meeting, you know, inserting themselves in that conversation. And it wasn't always helpful. And, you know, I think about my life and some of the personal obstacles that I've navigated, and some of the people that I want at that planning table, even if at some point they would need to be there. I did not want them there in the early stages. But Greg, you know, was one of them, you know, that was at that table, and he helped. And we've been given permission to share these stories. Amy, you know, really plan her good life. Amy is a person that worked in one of our facility-based supports, separated hangers, you know, was paid, you know, again, pennies on the dollar to do so. And when we eliminated our 14C, she didn't have what she considered her job, at the time. So, I did a lot of outreach. At the time, I moved into a position as employment engagement manager, and I was developing partnerships. A big part of Lifecourse framework is using the framework. In particular, I used the STAR to look at all the resources that we have internally and externally as well. So we knew we had this uniform company, that, was a contract for us. I was hoping that they would be an ally. When I reached out to them and asked them if they would consider giving some people that worked on those hangars an opportunity to work at their business, they were pretty rude. I'll just put it that way with their response. And I guess I understood why. As a businessman, they walked into our facility and they seen people sleeping on the tables. They seen people that weren't engaged, and that considered. I think they had some concerns that those would be the people that would be interviewing for the opportunities. So later on down the line, though, things had changed for them in that they were losing a lot of money because, we had people staving those hangars for them, organizing them, and now they were just letting the customer keep the hangars. So they reached out to us and said, hey, things have changed for us. We want to consider your offer, but we want people that are productive. So again, Amy, who, at the time, and her mom even, provides us with a quote that she just didn't believe that it was possible, for her to have success in the community. And for us, that was okay. We were on the high expectation route, and we knew that, and Greg and his team knew that, something, good could come of this. And, she ended up being one of their best workers. So it was, great opportunity. And it all came from Lifecourse. As I became an ambassador and went through that process, and it was intense. I'll be honest with you, I was still involved in engagement and developing these partnerships, and our now it's kind of become cliche. Meet them where they're at. You're right. And at the time, I wasn't a big advocate for segregated settings, even Special Olympics, although I understand why it's of value to people, but I was asked to be a coach, at Special Olympics. I'm a power lifter and have been doing that, at a ripe age of 44, start amateur powerlifting. And so I went in, and coached some of these athletes, and it was an extraordinary experience. We're actually going to be coaching a group up at Slippery Rock this weekend. Same guy that I'm about to tell you about, his name's Ryan, and Ryan, really cool guy, went all the way to, he almost actually went to national championship with the Special Olympics and powerlifting, but he needed a job, and right next to his house was one of these CAT heavy equipment dealerships, and it just so happened that his dad thought that would be a good place for him since he couldn't drive, and it was close by, so the vulnerability stuff would be taken care of. He'd be there, and dad is pretty involved in his son Ryan's life, and so I had an in there. One of my really good friends is a manager, at this CAT dealership. So I called him. I said, "Hey, we got a guy, and he needs an opportunity." And I reflect back on what I was doing at that time, and it wasn't what I would consider a best practice. Asking businesses if they would consider hiring people with disabilities, but growing these partnerships was working for us at the time. But that's what the dialogue sounded like, and he said, absolutely. We need people to clean them. We need the business cleaned. If he's interested in that, we'll hire him. So I was really excited. I said, Dad, I didn't talk to Ryan, and I reflect on that as me missing it, quote unquote. So when I talked to Dad, and he was excited. he talked to Ryan, and Ryan said, I'm not interested. So I'm like, oh, wow, I wonder why, So I met with Ryan, and we started off with the star, and we transitioned quickly because the star can be difficult to fill out at times if you don't really have a good idea of what the vision is, right? So, we started talking, and I thought to myself, let's go over what he does not want, in his life. What doesn't he want? And if you look at a trajectory, and I know we've had trajectories flying up on the screen today, I might try and put one up as well. There is a box where we don't want that trajectory to be going, right? We don't want it going down. We want it going up. But there's a box down below, the page, and it says what I don't want. Brian did not want to work cleaning, and he did not want to work in janitorial. Ryan, did not, want to work, thank you, with machinery. Ryan had no interest in that and working next door to his house. So he filled this out. I was just like, oh, wow, So then, when we moved up to, what you want, I was like, well, what do you want? Well, Ryan wanted to be Brian Shaw, or, some of you don't know who he is, but, he's a USA power lifter. So that was good. He wrote that in. Ryan wanted to be a professional fitness trainer. So Ryan, discloses this, and it's something that we have to work on when it comes to powerlifting events. By the way, quickly in our relationships, he moved into powerlifting league with me, where it's inclusive, which is his choice, obviously, and he just took first about a month ago, so that's a good thing. See how I jump around. But anyway, here he wants to be this, fitness coach, right? And we link him with this job coach, finds him a job at LA Fitness. He's working there now. He's participating in certification, to become a trainer. He's almost at the end of that already. So, again, just, one of these, I guess, aha moments early on in my, experience as an ambassador. And, those mistakes that I made early on will not, be mistakes I make again. I'll be sure to make new mistakes. I do not have a mastery, of person-centered thinking, planning, and action. And, I've seen some of the experiences in the chat there, 10 years of having some type of person-centered training. I've been participating this entire month of September in person-centered training. And I think I'm at 5 right now in September alone, 2-hour trainings. And, I'm still learning something new every time. And George is a guy that Greg and I, again, Greg, who Greg described himself as an early adopter. I like that language. To me, that's the plain language of Lifecourse. We're really, really looking for early adopters, people that can champion this process, not just as an organization, but, as a state, hopefully. I've also presented trainings nationally, as well as recently did one in Canada. So, we want to see more early adopters, more champions of this. And, Greg, really helped us along, in, to me, part of the principles are developing supports to meet challenges for people, and George is a guy, and he'll say, I have my own challenges. So, it's give and take. But he was having some challenges, and I can't remember, Kathy, maybe you can put it in chat, how you described it. It was a word that I'm not even going to try. I'm going to call it as TMP, too much peopling. And that's what was going on for George. Like 3 or 4 of the homes that he lived in, some people are going to describe them as group homes. We consider them, part of our community supported living, but they're staffed 24/7. And he was with, a lot of different housemates, a lot of different people that had one thing in common. They had disability and they had consolidated, right? So he did not get along with these housemates. He became angry at them, and I'll just put ... We had behaviorists involved. He did not like, the staff, that were engaged in his life. And maybe I should restate it. He didn't like the duration of the staff that were involved, in his life. They were there in parts of his day when I believe, he really didn't think they were needed, if that makes any sense to you at all. So, as we really started to look at, and I am going to try and go ahead and, share my screen at this point. We'll see.
Jack, you're muted.
Hey, Jack, I think we lost you. You were muted.
Sorry, guys. When
Thank
I
you.
transition into a form, it must mute me. So what I was saying is, we had this star, we had this trajectory that we were filling out, and the things that George didn't want, were all the things that were happening in his life at the time. So all we had to do was not do that again. So he picked his own home. It was close to his Knights of Columbus, organization where, he sat on, in an official position there. It was close enough to work. Actually, Bobby Joe's in the room. She drives him to work every morning. He's in a situation where he doesn't need staff there for any more than 30 hours a week. So it's called less than 30. But he calls me when he wants me to come in. He chooses which staff come in and support him. So, it's really been learning for us, using, this framework. And it's not a separate framework, like one's for the people that we support and one's for, parents who have kids with disabilities. We work with a lot of parents as well. Anne Marie and I, some of the work that I'm very, very proud of has been in, helping families realize what the strengths are. I had a proud moment recently, Anne Marie, where I was working with an SC and we were working with a family, and the SC started talking about, these buckets of unmet needs that people have. That is not how we should treat people, right? We shouldn't treat people as they're a bucket of unmet needs. But she started to do that, and Kara, this SC, said, you know what? We don't start with deficits. This isn't a deficit-driven process. I was like, you go, So that was part of us engaging Emery, I believe, and Lynn. I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that, as an organization, Achieva has a strategic plan, and 1A is to infuse person-centered practice into the hearts and minds of all stakeholders of our organization. So that's ancillary departments, that's each department. Recently I presented to our board, and we have some board members, going to training as well. So the framework, is used in all areas of the organization to promote what? Culture shift. So we want to infuse that life course into the hearts and minds of all stakeholders. Collaboration, we didn't realize it, and maybe we didn't do it willfully, but there were silos within the organization, and it included information hoarding. Like our advocacy department, they've always been doing person-centered, thinking and planning, but, were they sharing it with everybody? Were we asking them for it? So now we have this collective leadership because we have these champions all throughout our organization. And some of these champions, now that we're contracted with Lifecourse, and that happened in July, are going through ambassador training. So we have 13 going through ambassador training within the next month. And then we'll have about 15 or 16 more going through, and that will include some trainer modules. That way we can sustain this within our organization. I know Allegheny County, I really have been stealing liberally from them. So I don't want to apologize for that, because I think, you know, we have a great community of practice going. But this month alone, we'll have 700 people trained in the introduction to Lifecourse framework in our organization. And I just want to thank, you know, the people that are on this call that, you know, are Achieva employees for going big, you know, having these high expectations. Again, you know, right now I'm just one of 3 ambassadors, and, you know, we have these early adopters like Greg. You know, we have people that are facilitating, helping people facilitate the plan, and we still have inherent issues like, how can we help a person own their plan? You know, George can pull out, you know, his plan, and that's fine, but is it living and breathing? How are we going to help it live and breathe, and not just be because, you know, there's challenges or he needs a job? You know, how can we help people, again, you know, have these high expectations for us and for themselves? So, you know, this is just some of the work that I've done. I appreciate, you know, you all listening. You know, and again, I appreciate, you know, Greg, our IT guy today, you know, and Patty and Maria for hosting, you know, the training. And I'm going to mute myself, and I think we'll be possibly transitioning into Q&A, and or, you know, if there's anything else Lynn, you know, would like to mention about our collaboration, or Anne Marie or Kathy, that's fine too. Thank you.
Sorry, Jack, we got crickets. I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to collaborate with Achieva, and this has been a really great experience. So we're just really excited for our future years together.
This is Candy. I have some slides and links I wanted to share with you as we're closing out this morning, but I also just want the co-presenters to know, feel free to jump in and talk about whatever has come up from your end.
Also, there's 2 questions, 2 comments in the question and answers. I don't know if someone wants to take a stab at answering. It's around the question of the providers being able to access funding to diversify, I think, what's available. Can you all see those questions?
Yeah, this is Kathy. I've been working on answering one of those questions that are still in the Q&A. So but we can do it live if that's easier. It doesn't matter. So, and actually have a discussion. That's fine too. Candy, do you want to do your slides, or do you want me to?
Sure. I'll go through these. You will have them as handouts, and so you'll be able to see them yourselves and print them out and use the links. So where do we go from here? We need to connect families with ordinary examples of what's possible. Jack just shared a bunch of examples, and so did Allegheny County, that demonstrate some possibilities that weren't known before. And it can be transformational in your thinking to hear about those experiences. We need to invest in expectations. We need to catch and communicate a collective vision. And these are all things that I've heard about this morning. And as professionals, we need to let parent expectations challenge our own. And that's tough. And I appreciate, Jack, that you shared some examples of the learning curve. And actually, Anne Marie did too. Some examples of our learning curve that happens as we try new things and new ways of thinking. Knowing about charting the life course can guide our thinking and problem solving. It can influence our practices in specific areas, policies, actions, procedures, and the tools, which you've heard and seen some of, are resources for planning and problem solving. They're conversation starters, problem solvers, help us envision the future and empower ownership. Jack's example of someone, you have a vision for someone, but it's different than that person's vision sometimes. And so we need to empower people to have their own visions and to listen to that. All people, any setting, any age. You visit Charting the Life Course at lifecoursetools.com. And there's tons of videos, as Jack was saying, and lots of them are only 2 or 3 minutes. So it's not necessarily a huge investment of time at a time. This is the one-page profile that you saw Allegheny County share. The trajectory for exploring. We've talked about the trajectory a couple of times and about the vision and what you don't want. And you can start anywhere in that process, but it helps guide your thinking. And the integrated.
It's not bringing up your screen right now. Sorry, Candy.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I was sharing it so beautifully in my head.
But you illustrated it well. I mean, we could all envision that.
Okay. And then there are contacts. So I will, that was the end. So you will have that as a handout if you don't already. So you'll get to physically see them as well. Thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions that they'd like to put in the Q&A box?
Perhaps while we're getting more questions added to the Q&A, I can touch on the question around using the framework to help develop a support plan to help somebody realize their goal of becoming a musician. I think one of the things that we recognize is a benefit of using the tools is that by having these conversations and talking about the options that are available in the community, that it helps to build a bigger or broader support system than simply paid supports. So I think if you can bring the right people to the table, which developing a tool such as the integrated STAR can be beneficial to recognize who else is in the area, who else is available, who's a resource.
It's not letting me. I had the same problem. Yeah, I don't want to dismiss it.
Okay, so it is a means of connecting with others in the community that can help the person realize their dream. We do recognize that it can be a bit of a barrier that we have wait lists for waiver funding, but that is one of the benefits of using the Life Course framework, is that it doesn't limit you to just paid services to help somebody realize their dreams. It is a way of branching out, thinking a little bit differently, certainly including those paid supports that might be needed, because we're not dismissing that is sometimes the case for people, but broadening the approach and really keeping that vision at the center of the discussion. So I hope that answered the question a little bit.
Thank you, Kathy. And I'm sorry, I think I was unmuted for a second there. Someone asked the question how they can get the slides. We do plan on, I will send out the slides to everyone that attended today. I'll gather all the presenter slides and get those out to you by the end of the day. And as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be put on our website again by the end of today or tomorrow afternoon. There was so much good information, so we like to keep that as a resource for people to go back to and re-listen to if they need to. I'm just looking to see, and I'll watch the Q&A in the chat. I mean, there's a couple more minutes if anyone wants to add anything, I'll take a look, at the end here. But I just wanted to thank all of our presenters for taking the time out of their busy schedules today to do this webinar for us, and for all of you in attendance as well. There was so much good information, and we really had a nice big group of people taking the time to view this webinar today. Again, I reminded you it will be up on our website. My contact information is up on the screen now. So if anyone has any questions or needs any more information from either us at Achieva Family Trust or any of the presenters, I'd be happy to put you in contact with them. I hope that you can all join us next month. We have a series of 2 webinars coming up starting in October on successful strategies for self-advocacy. Part 1 will be on Tuesday, October 5th. You can find more information on our website at achievafamilytrust.org. And then in November, we're going to have Part 2, where we will have a panel of self-advocates with a date to be determined. But watch for that. That'll be in early November. And then the last thing I wanted to tell everyone about was in November, we're having our first annual Future Planning Conference. And that's going to be on Wednesday, November 10th. And it's going to be kind of a half day, a little bit more than a half day of presentations on future planning, government benefits, decision making, and housing for individuals with disabilities. So again, please visit our website for more information. And if you receive our newsletter, you'll see information there. And if you don't receive our newsletter, please let me know. I'd be glad to add you to our newsletter list. In the meantime, I don't see any more questions that popped out. Like I said, I will send out the handouts and the slides. And if anyone else have anything they want to add? No, it looks like, let me just, it looks like there was one more question that came up. One of the presenters mentioned a bucket of unmet needs, and that is exactly how it feels to be a part of this system.
Hey, thank you for recognizing that. And I want to give Roy Gerkensberger credit for that line. That is not mine, although he just said it out loud. And it really struck me too. I'm glad you validated that. Roy is a mentor in the learning community, as well as a Lifecourse mentor and ambassador. And I'm sorry that you feel that way. And, something I forgot to mention, like when Candy was talking about the 25%, Roy did that too. Just imagine, if, there, was, the 75% and we just sprinkled in supports, versus, just looking at that need-based, model. So, those were 2 things I had to say, and I'm glad that you brought it up. But so I would get a start in trajectory. I'd love to work with you on this and look at how can we change the narrative, I put my email in, the chat or whatever, but I'm at jbutler@achieva.info. I would love to work with you and help change that narrative. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And again, thank you to everyone who attended this webinar today and to all of our presenters. Have a good afternoon.